Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. So we've got a really interesting episode. So we've got Amanda here, who has been a student for, we're going on 2 months at this point?
2 months.
This month
yep.
3?
Month.
Yeah.
Going into
Okay.
month
So
3.
she's in our analytics apprenticeship program, which it's such perfect timing, Charles, that you came along because she just built out the actually, you can probably explain this a whole lot better than me because you're on the data engineering side. So you built out the whole database for what, $100 million company? For
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, happy to jump in. It was one of my previous positions. I was the director and manager of data and analytics and the data engineering team. And yeah, we built out a data warehouse. Soup to nuts, the full thing as a team.
So I'm much more on the data, on the business side. So like all of the technical stuff is like, I'm glad that people like you, Charles, and Amanda exist because all the coding and all that is like just very, I think it's just very detail oriented. So Charles, right now you founded your own analytics startup called Sol Analytica. And that's kind of what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Sol Analytica. We're a data consultancy and data software company. We work with small, mid-sized businesses kind of across the country. We do every piece of the data spectrum of work. So that's everything from talking with a company that's just, they heard the buzz term, what is this data thing? Like, how important is it? So we'll come in and we'll do a seminar or talk about what data-driven decision-making is and how to get data into your company and why it's important to have a data strategy. And then we'll do the whole spectrum. So we'll come in and we'll help identify source systems and build out the ETL and ELT to get your data to where you want it. A lot of our clients already have something of a data warehouse. So we'll either use their data warehouse and continue developing it, rehash it to be kind of a modern data warehouse, or we'll host it in the Sol Analytica data warehousing environment as well. So we have a hosted environment where we do that. We'll design the warehouse to answer the questions that it is that are most important to that business. And that's a process, on the business side of listening to what it is that people want to report on, what their KPIs are, helping them identify those KPIs, maybe identify new KPIs, and then we'll build the warehouse. We'll design the warehouse and build it. And then on the data viz side, we get that data in front of people because it's just critical from a business perspective. Like you can have all the data in the world. If nobody knows it's there, then you're not getting anything from it. And so we do the viz portion of that to really bring the data to life and do the analytics. Do the business analysis side of that as well. Will help out as that data is now visualized. How do you make it actionable? What decisions do you make based on that data? All the way down, continuing on the spectrum into data science and doing when our clients get to the point where they're ready to do some data science, they have an interesting question, we can help with that front too. So it's literally the entire spectrum of data consulting, and it's really an exciting opportunity to be in all those different places.
I'm so excited that I get to expose my students to someone like you. And also too, all right, so to kind of lay out the plan for this episode. So you've actually interviewed Amanda for a junior data engineering role earlier in this week. So we're going to flip the script. She's going to ask you questions about, okay, well, why did you ask certain questions? Kind of unpack your thinking behind your interview process. And then also too, we're going to kind of revisit it where, Amanda, you're going to do a kind of a mock interview. We're going to have you share some of your work and then kind of role play, a technical interview. And then that way, you can present something and then immediately have a conversation kind of like a meta conversation around, all right, how did I do? How can I improve? So yeah, and then towards the end, I've actually got a couple more students kind of in the wings here that we're going to pull on for a Q&A session. So Charles, we are going to be getting so much value out of you today. I really appreciate it.
I'm really excited for this. I think it's a really, you've come up with a great structure for this, and I'm really looking forward to it, and continuing to talk with Amanda after our interview earlier this week.
Awesome. All right. So did you want to jump into the mock interview now, or did you want to jump into having Amanda kind of ask you to unpack your interview, like thinking?
I think it might. Yeah, we can do that either way. Let's go ahead and do the mock interview.
Okay.
I know we were talking about doing a demo and showing some things, and I think one, given that some of your listeners are listeners and not video, and two, just from a time perspective, I think maybe we'll skip over the demo and just kind of talk through what that was. I think that would be
Sure.
that would be totally fine. We haven't really done much intro for Amanda yet, and I know one of my first interview questions is like, tell me a little bit about yourself. So maybe it makes sense to go ahead and do that mock interview, and kind of a reminder to the audience. So I don't know if it would be fair to the rest of my candidates that we do a mock interview as the actual data engineering position. And Amanda has
Right.
a really nice set of skills that are both data engineering and analytics. And so just as a reminder, we'll be doing this interview as like a first round, and as though I had a data analytics position open.
Okay, perfect.
I think that would be a good jumping off place.
Because man, we just had a coaching call where I coached you on literally that question. Tell me about yourself. So I'm going to be in the background, just taking notes, giving you a grade as your professor.
Okay.
So actually, what I'm going to do is just pull myself off the screen and then kind of give you to the full spotlight. All right, you guys ready? I'm pulling myself off now. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's start this mock interview.
Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Charles.
I'm so glad that you could make the time to come and meet with me and get a chance for us to get to know each other and kind of see what kind of fit we might have here. I'm really excited for this.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you already know this because we did this, but one of the first questions I ask, and I always offer the opportunity, is would you like to tell me a little bit about yourself, or would you like to hear about Sol Analytica first?
Yeah, I think we should all hear a little bit more about Sol Analytica first.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll skip right over the presentation that I did at the very beginning of this podcast because you just heard it.
Right.
The additional piece that we offer, in addition to the data consultancy, is I mentioned we're a software company too. We have a product that we call Sol Vista. It is a Tableau embed or embedded analytics. It allows our clients to put their Tableau viz in a portal environment so that their clients or their execs or their team can log in and see it. It has a really cool additional use case, which is that it's a terrific place to do a portfolio demonstration and show, if you're a job seeker, what your Tableau portfolio looks like. And so that's the other piece of Sol Analytica. And thanks for asking. Amanda, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm Amanda. I am a data analyst, and I previously came from healthcare. I worked in healthcare for about 10 years. That's why I really developed a passion for data and data analytics after working with mainly healthcare data, which is what I currently do. I have developed a love for the entire data analytics lifecycle, so I appreciate all parts of that. I am mainly looking into going into a more technical role like data engineering, or heavier on the data analytics side.
Great. Yeah. So as a reminder, I know you're looking maybe for that data engineering position, and this is an interview for an analyst position. I'm excited after looking at resume to talk to you about the analyst portion of it. We do have positions that come up as data engineering frequently, but let's kind of start from there and see kind of where we can go. One of the things that I always listen for is kind of a successful track record or a love of data and analytics. And you're coming from a healthcare background. That actually makes a lot of sense because for us, Sol Analytica, we have clients in the healthcare space. So that's great. There's already a little bit of a map there. Can you tell me kind of what you were doing in that healthcare background and maybe what your story, how did you come to the data side of that?
Yeah, so I actually started as a paramedic, where we were involved in a lot of research studies, which is where the data began to come into play. So when I went back to school, I became a respiratory therapist and ended up at the company I'm at now, where we focus on medical devices. So I'm working with a lot of ERP data, troubleshooting devices based on that data, and working with patients to get their medical devices working.
Great. Is it when you were getting into doing some of that, was there a what was it that drew you to the data? Did you seek it out? Did it seek you and then you discovered that you enjoyed it? What does that part of the story look like?
I love critical thinking. I love solving problems. Working with data is just like a giant puzzle for me that I love solving problems with it and helping people.
Perfect. Yeah. So one of the things, yeah, so you mentioned that you like problem solving or solving puzzles. Can you tell me a data related problem or puzzle that you solved recently?
Yeah, so recently we had a bunch of devices that were coming back to us with a bunch of error codes. Turns out that they were all programmed as humidifiers and not the actual medical device, which made sense when they weren't recording the data over. And we found that error that way.
So you identified some unexpected scenario happening. You were able to dig into the data and find that. So tell me a little bit about maybe what tools did you use when you were digging into that data? What was your process for discovering that?
So the way the medical devices work is they transmit the data through Bluetooth. That Bluetooth gets uploaded to the system, and we're able to view the reports. Um, and without any data showing there, obviously you can tell that the patient's not using it. But whenever you go to check the modem of that device, it will not be able to call out. And then when you look into that further into the system, it's not going to be assigned like a device the medical device serial number. It'll come up as a different serial number, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. So you saw a little bit of data discrepancy. As an analyst, from my perspective, what I see, there's a bunch of different tools out there for doing data analytics, from Excel, which is a shockingly powerful tool. I think it's underrated in the industry that it's a place where analysts live. And then Viz with Tableau. Of those tools, what do you typically use when you're doing that exploration or figuring that data?
So we use SAP currently. I also use Excel heavily. Not too much like Tableau, Power BI, that sort of thing. Mainly the only visualizations are in Excel for this particular job.
Okay. Have you used Tableau, and do you use Tableau to do Viz?
I do. I use Tableau personally for my personal projects. I have also used Power BI for my apprenticeship with John David.
Perfect. Let's talk briefly about Excel. So one of the questions that I'll often ask is just kind of like sorry, I jumped out of mock interview and into talking about it. So for Excel, can you tell me just kind of like what are some Excel functions that you've recently used?
So just basic statistical functions are a large part of my day. Countif, SUMIF, pivot tables are a big one. Pivot charts for a big part of my day as well.
Mhm. Doing that pivot. And then you mentioned, so on personal projects, you mentioned that you do a little bit of Tableau. Where are those? Do you store those? Are those Tableau public? Is it something that we could see?
Yeah, I currently actually have those all uploaded into my Tableau public.
Awesome, perfect. And so if we were doing a screen share and a demo, which just didn't work out at the moment, if we were to go and take a look at some of those tableaus, maybe we can actually share that in the link afterwards so people can see them and see some of the work that you've done. Can you tell me like some of your tips and tricks for how you make a good looking Tableau? Like I think, is there a certain size you use for your canvas? How do you do like design elements?
Yeah, so for me, and I know a lot of visualization comes down to like personal preference or what your company wants. But for me, I use Canva a lot. I incorporate it into my visualizations. I find it great to make some aesthetically pleasing backgrounds. I typically go 1200 by 1200 or 1400 by 1400 pixels. I make my Canva background the same as I would set it in Tableau. I'll also make borders for my filter options in Canva as well.
Great. And what about data storytelling within your Tableau? Do you have an approach for how you want to pull out certain KPIs and how you want to highlight, like what are some of your favorite charts?
So I like to start with my most important at the top, and I like it to flow nicely, kind of as if you were reading it. It makes sense. I don't. I try to keep it just simple and easily absorbable, I guess.
Sure. That's great. Can you tell me, so like, when you're doing Tableau for personal projects, what are you using as a data source typically?
Typically, I will get data sources from Kaggle, data.gov, because I have the healthcare background. I've gotten a lot of my data from the CDC. Um, I always check to make sure they're credible. Um,
Great. This is a super abbreviated and fast interview. I would ask you a couple more technical questions, and we would dig in and take a look at some of your viz and really talk about what story you were trying to tell and all of that. To wrap up the kind of like mock interview portion of this, do you have any questions for me? After we've kind of talked about this as part of the interview.
Yeah. So at this point, I would typically ask you like what your expectations are of someone that you would hire for this role, like in a 3-6 month mark.
Yeah. As a data analyst, my expectation would be that you're going to be coming in and probably hitting the ground running. We have quite a few existing clients who have data viz up and running. And I believe that one of the best ways that you can get to know the data is just to start using it and start getting familiar. As a data analyst, you're probably going to have some interaction with the client. And so you'll be talking with the client, starting to listen to kind of what the stories they're trying to tell are. We'll have a Jira board or a board that has a list of known things that we want to do for that viz and how we want to develop. It may be that we have you on a new viz. I don't have a position like that open at the moment. So it really depends where exactly we are when we open that position. But we would have probably a set of tasks and projects. And then as you become familiar with the data, you're going to be probably working with 1 or 2 or 3 clients. And so there's a bit of like jumping from one to the next. And you would potentially develop with those clients new dashboards. You'll be working with the data engineers. And so when you want to build a dashboard, it's what data do I need? Is it available in the warehouse? Is it something the engineers need to build and make available? Sometimes, really depending on how technical you are as an analyst, you would be in the data warehouse making views yourself so that you can expose those to Tableau and do that. Really, I believe that everybody's kind of on a spectrum of what part of that data journey they're most comfortable in. And so some people are going to be like more client focused and data viz focused, and other people are going to be more data viz and data engineering. Other people are going to be data engineering and data science. And so everybody kind of fits in a slightly different spot there. And so that would be kind of my expectation. Is the short answer to your question, is that you come in, you pretty much hit the ground running with Viz. You're working on existing Viz, you're making new ones. You're working with the client to get up to speed. And then by 3 to 6 months in, hopefully we have a new client coming in and we can assign you as a new analyst on that client and really get up to speed there.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other question.
Sure.
I know Sol Analytica is kind of unique in that you work with a lot of different clients across a lot of different business types. So when it comes to your data viz tools, are those tools proprietary to Sol Analytica, or are they proprietary to the organizations that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I think because we're across a whole series of different industries, our focus is small and mid-size, and that means we're working with a lot of companies that aren't super technical. In the end, they're paying us as consultants to build tooling that they then own. And so because they're paying us as consultants, they typically would own the work product. That said, there is tooling that is kind of universal across our clients. And so a lot of times we'll either have a conversation with the client saying, hey, we're building out this tool. Is it proprietary, or is it something that we can build as Sol Analytica? And a lot of times it's less expensive for the client if we build it as Sol Analytica and then share it out and resell it to kind of multiple clients. And like Sol Vista is an example of that, where we had a client who was looking for an embed solution. We found a couple on the web and then determined that given that we had other clients who were looking for it also, and that we had some customized needs, that it was worth building. And so we built it, and we built it internally for our clients, and got just like wonderful usage, wonderful reviews. We were able to take their feedback and incorporate it into the system. And now we've gotten to a point where we're opening that up. And so anybody on the web who wants to do embedded analytics and put their Tableau in there can do that. And so it's kind of a mix to the answer to your question. Most of the time, the clients are owning the proprietary software that we're building for them and the data warehouse structure that we're building for them. Occasionally, we'll see a use case where it makes sense for everybody to make it more broadly available across our clients, and our clients benefit, from that. The small and midsize, it's a huge savings to know that coming to a company like Sol Analytica, we have these tools in the wood shop so that we can use them for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Great, that was a great question.
All right, very cool. So I'm bringing on both Hunter, so podcast co-host here, and then Kumar. I think you've been on the podcast multiple times at this point, right?
Twice.
So okay, that was amazing, Charles. Thank you so much. I love that the students just got like a back end view of like what an interview would go like. One thing that I think is interesting that we can kind of piggyback off of is, so Kumar, you have a background in design, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how would you answer the question about how you design your visualizations? So Charles, when he builds out his like Tableau, it looks like something from the New York Times. It's just so like, it looks like someone put it into a newspaper. I mean, it's amazing.
It depends. It just depends. If it's my own personal thing, then I try to experiment. If it's for a client, I try to see what they're used to and how they navigate a site. So everyone thinks that the board always goes left to right, but you can make them go right to left. It just depends on how they use, how familiar they are with navigating a program or a website. And then I try to build it to their ease of use and what do they want up front. And that's my start via client side. For my side, I try to experiment and see, okay, what colors am I limiting myself to, or just use one color and try to make it easy to read, easily digestible, and easily able to navigate. So,
Okay, so I've got an idea. So Amanda, your site's up and running on Sol Analytica. How about we have Charles and Kumar give you a review of the work that you've done?
oh,
Yeah.
You just throw us a curveball, sure thing. Yeah.
So Amanda, you can share your screen.
Okay, yeah.
And this is great because Charles, this gives you an opportunity to demo this so that people can kind of see, because it's one thing to talk about it at a high level, and those of you who are going to listen to this later as a podcast on iTunes or Spotify or something, you can go to our YouTube channel to check out this to actually get to see the what the nitty gritty of what's going on, because I think Charles, actually, this is an interesting question, and I'll also buy us some time to get Amanda to get that pulled up. When you do technical interviews, how much of it is like you're going to have them screen share and walk through versus kind of ask them about, because it's funny because the post that I made promoting this episode, I mentioned that like there's two things about acing your technical interview. It's like knowing how to click the buttons and actually operate the tools.
Mhm.
But the second point that I think most people miss, it's a lot more subtle, is understanding why. So like how, and this is where judgment comes in. So two people can have access to the same tool, have the same tool knowledge, but one understands the business acumen and can make it sing and can make it drive sales up or reduce costs or, just make the overall business, the margin run more efficiently.
Yeah. Okay. So I heard a couple questions in there. I'll kind of take them a step at a time. When I'm doing a technical interview, and this interview was a little less technical than a lot of them, but my interview process is first we're going to do kind of an intro interview where it's really high level, and really the things that I'm looking for is what is your relationship with data? Do you get excited about it? Is it a part of your life? There's just a set of people who are driven and excited by data. And so you don't necessarily have to be that, because you could have really amazing other skills. But that's a key component of one of the things that I'm looking for in that initial interview. In the initial interview, I'm also kind of checking to see if the candidate knows what they're talking about, if the things on their resume are legit. There's a shocking number of people who are interviewing that aren't real people. And there's a whole story behind that that I don't think we need to really go to, but yeah, and so it's sussing out, is this a legit candidate? You can kind of do that with the resumes, but sometimes, and it happens, you get into that first round interview and you're like, who am I talking? Why are they getting answers, like they're reading answers off their screen that somebody else is typing for them or something? Those are kinds of things that you call out. And then it's really like, would we do a second interview? And then in the second interview, it gets much more technical often. And so, and this is my style. Everybody has a different style. In the second interview, we would potentially do a screen share and coding example. So live SQL coding or live Tableau development. So we can see how the person works and really what kinds of questions they ask.
Charles,
that was the first
this is amazing. This is literally the questions I get all the time. So I'm just going to send them to this video. Like, if you're worried about an interview, go check out this episode. So and you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. Like, you're literally someone who hires analysts. To where, as a professor, I can teach, but it's like I just need to. It's funny. The lazier I am, and I bring you on, like I wasn't even on screen for 20 minutes of this episode, the better it gets. All right. So what we got now is this.
Amanda, this looks awesome.
Yeah. Sol Analytica interface. Amanda, you've embedded. Actually, I'm robbing you of an opportunity. Amanda, you tell me what's going on here.
Okay, so this was a really cool opportunity that Charles and Sol Analytica provided me. So this is going to be where you're going to be able to host your portfolio. So you can upload your Tableau visualizations. You can see them on the side here. And I'll just pull it up full screen.
All right. So what are we
Okay,
looking at
so
right now?
this data set is for a fictitious company, Quantigration Incorporated. I analyzed their customers, their orders, and their return merchandise to figure out where their biggest customer base is, where their smallest customer base is, which products are being ordered the most in which regions, and which products are being returned the most and why.
Gotcha. All right, come on. It's your moment to shine. Give us some feedback. How's the so okay, one thing that you mentioned was you want to make sure that you check in with the end user on how they're used to using things, like using the web. So you're to make that explicit, you're talking about user experience, right?
Yes.
And what's funny is that there's a whole meme in the analytics space about, pie charts need to die. But I can't tell you the amount of times consulting that the client wants to see their data in a pie chart. And it may not be best practice, but that's what they want to see. And, I mean, you've got, it's kind of, you got to thread the needle a little bit of, what's good for them versus what they're used to. And maybe over time, move them towards, a more effective way of consuming data.
Yeah, but it's not really the visual, it's how they flow through. Like, do they click mostly on the left or on the right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that's where you would tend to put your filters. So I know if they're clicking on the right-hand side, sometimes right-handed people click on the right more than left-handed people. So that's also another thing that I notice. I have the benefit of seeing this before. But I would say that I like the spacing of things. The colors, I would say to knock back the empty space of the donut chart so that the actual values pop a little bit more, so you're able to see that better. So that would be one thing that I would say. The filters, I would probably raise them up a little bit. So you have a line at the top that is in your logo that you could
that's true.
kind of have that flow over into the filter.
Yeah, that would look a lot neater.
So it points over there. So that's another thing that I would do. I would raise that up a little bit, or you could put that dotted line above the filter so it lines up with that line.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. Amanda, could you try clicking that little full screen icon down in the bottom? I can't tell if if you're getting like a portion. Oh no, that's exit full screen. Okay. Yeah, I think it must just be the sizing that.
Yeah.
It'd be really, I think from a flow perspective, it'd be good to see the whole thing. Yeah, that's interesting.
On that note, Charles, Amanda, what you can do on the dashboard is okay. Yeah, you can set it so it automatically fits the screen and it'll scale it up and down to where okay. See, now from a UI perspective, you got a scroll bar, which it is a lot of information. So maybe that's how I do my largest client. Actually, that's what they want. They want one dashboard and they want to scroll down versus I have other clients who want page 1, click to page 2, and then that's how they want it consumed. But yeah, it was good. Sorry, Charles, I cut you off.
I love the comment about pie charts. I will, in defense of pie charts, there is a very occasional case where you do want a pie chart. I've got a client who has a set of data. It is literally like 100,000, and this month 30,000 of them were this thing, and 50,000 of them were this other thing. And so that's a spot where there's a pie chart. But generally, 100% agree.
Right.
It's a very limited use case where you would actually want a pie chart.
I will say in defense of these pie charts, they do have points that show like percentages, so you can very easily say, oh, Southwest, that's right below 10% right there. So I would say it's a good addition to these pie charts.
All right. So
Yeah.
from a data visuals, this is a little pop quiz question. I'm putting you guys in the hot seat. Why? Why are pie charts generally not best practice in data viz?
When you got 20 and 20.2 and you're visual in that, and in a pie chart.
So okay, yeah. So it can be very cluttered, but there's like a very concrete reason as to why. Like, okay, I'll guide you guys a little bit. Why is the bar chart better, generally speaking? Well, okay, actually, the bar chart is like the default. If you've noticed that in Tableau, like generally they put it into a bar chart most of the time when you pull in data. Why is that as opposed to a pie chart?
Yeah, you got me on that one.
Really? Come on, I thought you would get that. So our eyes are really good. If we have a synced axis, we can tell the difference in links. But our eyes can't tell the difference between a 45 and a 43 degree angle. But if you were to line up 43 versus 45, you could see that 45 was slightly larger than the other. So that's just kind of some data visualization best practice there.
But that depends on your screen.
What do you mean?
If your screen, because I ran into this problem while animating. It's still difficult whether it's a pie chart or a bar chart if the numbers are pretty small. So you have that's why you have those indicators. And if your screen is if you're like before, this was a huge problem with aliasing, where if they're too close together, before HD came out, you couldn't tell the difference, even if they're a little bit off because of the flickering on the screen. So if the screen is flickering top and then bottom, top and then bottom, they look the same.
Interesting.
That's true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Amanda, I know you have another viz in here. Do you want to pop out of full screen and maybe go to the third one? I think that you've got set up.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think it's the integration. Is that what it is? So one of the things. Go ahead. Yeah, tell us about this dashboard, and I can tell you what I really like about this one.
Okay, very cool. Wait, is that the same one?
Okay, so this
sorry, music and mental health.
Like the first, yeah. So this one is music and mental health.
Yeah.
Right, I remember this one. This one's got a very like artistic feel to it. Yeah, no, that looks cool.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
So this one, I analyzed the effect that different genres of music, as well as beats per minute, had on different categories of mental health disorders.
Cool. So I really found the scatter plots on this one interesting. And it's having the grid and seeing how it was just a really unique way of showing the kind of combination of each pairing of factors. And obviously the factor 2 itself is 1-to-1. And so you see that line pop out there. But I also liked the way you did the interactivity here. It's very straightforward. It's pretty simple. So if you go to that pick your favorite genre, and you can just in that pull down menu switch to a different one. I really like that. I'd be interested to hear visual feedback from somebody else.
From Kumar, what are you thinking, Kumar?
Yeah.
From me.
Yeah, you're the viz guy. I mean, this is what you've done for 10 years now.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love this. I didn't get to see it finished, so I saw some of the beginning parts, and you changed some things. I would say my favorite part is the left and the bottom. The scatter plot becomes a little bit noisy because of the volume of them, but I do like them if you're able to filter the options with the scatter plot, that would work best.
Like
So
maybe if you had a
that-
filter, maybe you
meaning
had a
that,
filter showing like depression, anxiety, insomnia. You like select one of them, one row.
Exactly.
Interesting. To piggyback off what Kumar said, maybe build this into a storyboard in Tableau, where point 1 is overview. Point 2 could be the entire thing is a scatter plot. So it takes up all of the space. And then, I think making it interactive where you could drill down on, the specific boxes. What's interesting is this is where I think Power BI actually might be a little bit more effective from visualization standpoint, which usually I like Tableau more than I like Power BI, but you can click on specific visits and then blow them up. That could take up the whole space, which I'm not sure how to do that. I think you'd have to there's nothing I think built into Tableau to do that at the moment. But
yeah, so we do actually 2 of those types of things. We do, some of our clients do.
Oh, cool.
So the concept of storyboarding. If you pop out and show kind of the frame of Sol Vista again, Amanda, what our clients will do is, here you go. So those sections on the nav on the left are completely configurable and you can move them around. And so they'll make a big section that might be like, let's tell the story about this ad campaign, right? Mm-hmm. And then if they want to storyboard it, they might have 3 or 4 dashboards that are related to that, and they'll make a link for each of them. And so the expectation is that somebody might come in as a sale, like if they're going to a client and doing a sales pitch or like a QBR, a quarterly business review, they would click on the first link and then click the second, third, fourth. And so they can tell that story in a sequence. You can also in Tableau kind of make drill through work. So you can set it up so that when you hit a link on a dashboard, it actually within the dashboard kind of goes to another view or another dashboard there. And so
interesting.
That's something else that we've got clients who are doing that for sure.
Yeah, well, now that I'm thinking about it, didn't they introduce a couple years back where you can actually have a data visualization embedded into a tooltip feature? So you hover over it and then you can see it. But I don't think that takes up the full screen, can it? I haven't done that in years.
So you can make that hover tooltip kind of any size that you want. Cool. I do caution my clients against that because Tableau tends to preload all those tooltips, and so it can have a performance impact. And so if you're going to do that, you need to be careful about like what you're putting in there and how many of them there are on the page, because sometimes people get a little tooltip happy. And so they just need to be, kind of guided towards what works and what's the best end user experience.
So Charles, these kinds of thoughts are what you were looking for when you're asking technical interview questions.
Yeah, exactly. And, everybody has, I think, an important thing to know about interviewing in general is that you're really looking for the best match between somebody's skills and what the company is looking for. And there are lots and lots and lots of companies out there. So if what you're finding as a candidate is, if your skills aren't exactly what people are looking for, then it's fine. Like there's other companies out there, and from a company perspective, it's fine. There's other candidates out there. At any given time, there's thousands of jobs that are available that are in the ballpark for any one candidate, and most of them are not the right job for that candidate. And so I think it's an important part of the interview process is really acknowledging that it's both. Like the candidate is interviewing the company to see if it's like where they want to work, and the company is interviewing the candidate to see if the skills that candidate has is what they're looking for. When you're doing an interview, you're also kind of interviewing into that employer's network, especially in small mid-sized businesses. If I'm looking for a data engineer and somebody who is much stronger as a data scientist or a data analyst, I have a network of other small and mid-sized businesses that I'm working with that, it may occur to me, oh, this person's really great for this other position. And so when I'm listening, what I'm listening for is from a technical perspective is, does this person have the skill set that I'm looking for the position that I currently have open? And I've also got in the back of my mind like future positions that I know may be coming soon. But yeah, that's one of the pieces that I'm looking for when I'm doing a technical interview is, do they have the specific set of skills? But from the that kind of initial interview, there's not really wrong answers, and that's an important thing to know. I mean, I guess technically there are wrong answers if you just literally give the wrong answer, but but you know, when I'm asking like, what is it that excites you about data, there's not really a wrong answer there. It's I want to hear your story, and what I'm looking for is things you say that allow me to ask the next question and guide me in the direction of what my next question is going to be, so that I navigate through my list of things that I'm trying to get out of the interview in a way that flows and feels comfortable.
I have a question for you, Charles.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest problems that you see with candidates that you're interviewing? Like, what's like the biggest thing that maybe stands out to you as like, oh, maybe we're not looking for this maybe we're not looking for this person to hire?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I mean, first off is this isn't a real candidate. That happens. That's like an immediate, they're out. Second off is, or secondly, there's a whole like next set of things in terms of, I guess, what would be some specific examples? It may be that maybe somebody comes on and they're super, I'm trying to say this in a way that my existing candidates who might be watching the video don't think too hard about it. I'll take an example from longer ago. There are just cases where somebody comes in and they ask inappropriate questions. And when I say that, you know, when you're hiring, there's just things about like, you don't ask about somebody's family or their age or their race. There's just like a set of kind of legal things that as a candidate, you're not.
Family? That's I haven't ever asked that in an interview or anything like that, but why is that?
So as an interviewer, you need to be careful about anything that might expose age or gender or like those types of things. Like there's a set of things that you need to just be a little bit careful about. As a candidate, if you're going and asking those things, it's just like we're here professionally. And so there's just some things sometimes, I mean, I'm just thinking of a specific example that happened for me. If I catch a candidate lying about stuff, you know, if there's stuff on their resume that doesn't match with what their experience is, if their resume is exaggerated for what they do, or they claim to know stuff that you start asking questions and it just doesn't add up. Right. Or, you know, I mean, there's so many unique scenarios, and I've done enough interviews that I've seen some kind of exciting, unique scenarios, and you know, sometimes it's just not right.
I get that. Well, okay, so to circle back to the family thing, one of the things that I tell the students when I'm coaching them on like, tell me about yourself, is that, you know, it's like a sentence about your past and a sentence about your present, a sentence about your future. You could include personal things, and I was thinking maybe like if you're both a parent, maybe that's an emotional bid where you can like kind of connect as a human thing. But I guess it would be more of, hey, you know, I've got a family of 5 or whatever, and then they're like, oh, I do too. Where you're not like, oh, do you have kids? Is that?
Yeah, so I'll back off of that family thing. I just had a specific example in my head that was like super inappropriate that I've had happen to me with a candidate in the past. No, there's nothing wrong with, and in fact, I would strongly encourage making a personal connection with your interviewer. I think that.
Well, yeah, I could see age and race being kind of like, you know, hot, especially because I think ageism is real in the workforce, and that's something I think a lot of people struggle with, especially like if they're, you know, a little bit older trying to break into a new space. I think that is kind of a struggle for them. is just kind of what we're starting to notice, which of course everyone says, no, it's not, and it could be also the relationship to someone in an older generation, how they relate to technology versus someone who, Gen Z has grown up with a cell phone since they were a child. So
yeah, there are. It's a really complicated question about how ageism exists in our industry, because I can tell you, being somewhat gray myself, I can tell you that I have a lot of people my age that I know and older than me that have been on the bleeding edge their entire life, and they are just as digitally native as anybody who's coming in as digital native now. It's also true that some people don't continue to innovate throughout their career.
Right.
And this is an industry where you just have to continually reinvent yourself and teach yourself new things. If you're out there still writing Fortran, there is a place for you, but it is a small place in a few large companies that still are using that. And I don't think that's an ageism thing. I think that's just literally a skill set thing and those people who do Fortran, by the way, get paid a lot because not many people do it anymore. So it's not the worst place to be.
Gotcha. All right. So how about this? So Charles, can you walk us through your career path? And I think the students, if there's anything that you kind of want to, you can basically pause Charles and say, hey, can you stop there and go deeper into that? So Charles, you've got just a very, very impressive resume. So do you just want to kind of walk us through that?
Well, thank you. I think it's just what's happened to my life. I've been lucky to get a bunch of opportunities to do different things. I also want to give, if we have the time for it, Amanda a chance to ask specific other questions that she had about the interview. But I know we're trying to stay within our hour block or whatever we have for the podcast.
Well, I'm open. Do you have a hard stop?
I do not. No. I'm okay.
I don't. So we can go run a little bit longer if you want to get both of those in there.
Sure. So I'll do a real brief walkthrough of my career, and I'll kind of accelerate towards the beginning because I think it's important for your cohort of people who are watching, and then kind of more towards the end because it may be more general. I don't know. We'll see. So at the beginning, I had a brief period where I was really kind of at a small company. I got exposed to a lot of different things, and I was able to kind of navigate through the full tech stack. And so I came into that company as kind of a front-end engineer, dev, and designer. And I really quickly moved through from front-end to back-end, actually front-end like design to front-end implementation to front-end engineering to back-end, and then to database, and then to data warehousing. And I was able to do that in a short amount of time because I was at a small company. We had to wear a lot of different hats, and then I just naturally gravitated towards the data stuff. It's always been like, as a kid, I don't know, wrote the lottery to ask for data. I had them mail me back when you would mail stuff. I had them mail me information about odds. And so just whatever, I've always been a data person. So at that company, I migrated to the data warehousing, and then went to a bigger company that we were basically an Instacart competitor before there was Instacart. We were one of the first ones doing click and collect, like when you go to the grocery store website, hold that, and then the groceries are ready for you to pick up. And so
right there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is your first job was for a smaller company and you wore a bunch of hats. Then you went to a larger company where you're a lot more kind of siloed and or I should say the role is much more defined. So we brought on Katie Underwood, who's now a coach for us. She's built out, she's worked for a huge company, but she's also built out a whole analytics team for a smaller company. And some of the advice that she gave Hunter here was one of the benefits of working for a larger company early on is that you get a stronger mentor type figure, to where if you're at a smaller company, you're basically doing the cutting edge work, like you're solving problems without guidance. which do you think is more valuable, or I guess is it more just like a personality fit?
Yeah, I literally don't think there's a better path through that. I think it's going to be depending on who you are and what opportunities come up in front of you. I had a great mentor when I went to that bigger company that I went to. And to be fair, it was still a smart startup and it was small when I joined it, but it was bigger than the previous company. I had a terrific mentor there and I learned a ton from him. He was really supportive of me and my career and really was able to help me grow. And so I totally hear that would be valuable. I also, now that I'm doing consulting and working with lots of different small companies, I really see the value as early in your career going and working for a consulting company. I'm not just pitching like come work for Sol Analytica. I see people who have gone to like Slalom or Proficient or one of those other bigger consulting companies and been able to see a bunch of different industries and see that as much as all these different industries have data, really the processes and the way you manage and control and manage data underneath is the same. And so by getting a broad list of industries and like going across vertical, like horizontally seeing stuff, you get to see the similarities between all those different use cases. And that also has a huge benefit. And so I think there's a lot of benefit to being a small company and wearing a lot of hats. I think there's a huge benefit to being in a big company and really getting to be in a developed environment where like there's actually a real HR system and benefits and layers of management where there's some institutional knowledge and you can learn from that and see what kind of works and what doesn't. And then also being at a consulting company where you get to see a bunch of different companies. All of those are really part of making a real well-rounded person by the time you're in your like 40s and 50s.
Yeah, I worked in the startup space with Silvertone, and that I feel like this has been, I mean, as far as my education is concerned, it's been one of the most educational experiences that I've had. And I worked in consulting. Oh, okay, come on. I worked in consulting for probably closer to a year. I worked in consulting, but that was with Silvertone and then individually as well. So like you said, I feel like I have had the opportunity to wear many hats, and whereas now I'm kind of looking for that next thing to learn, and I think that in a bigger firm it might be easier to find that for me. Like I had the opportunity recently to speak with Cameron Wanick. He's the VP of supply chain and IT for Ashley Furniture, and he was telling me about how for their company they use low code no code systems, and I've never used low code no code systems. I've been super on board with the Excel functions and code this, code that, make sure all the data is accurate. And it didn't even really occur to me. So that's just another example of some of these companies, they have different ways of viewing analytics outside of the super technical stuff that I'm used to.
Okay. All right. So Charles, you worked for a smaller company, got to wear a bunch of hats. Then you went into a larger company, got some great mentorship, saw a more mature organization. Did you go from analyst to was the role different?
So I came in from the data engineering side.
Okay.
Everybody, lots of data analysts. There's so many different paths. Some people come in wanting to data science. They come in as an analyst. They make their way through to data science. Some people come in as a data engineer. Some people come in as a business analyst and just get sucked into the data. Like there's lots of paths. I came in as a data engineer. I came in building these systems and then had the opportunity to lead the team and then kind of grow from data engineering to doing analysis and working with the analyst team to kind of the director level for data and analytics in general, and getting to be kind of in that position where I was working, making the whole team sing and doing the full spectrum of that. That was my path. There's people who are just as successful who come from the data science or the data analytics portion of that spectrum. That's just, everybody has a different path. After that company, Web Grocer, I came out here for I'm in LA, where we're getting a blizzard apparently today up in the mountains, which is unusual. So I came out here, worked briefly for another company, and then as a director of analytics or data analytics again, and then started working with what was the precursor to Sol Analytica. It was me and one other person. I was the CTO. We were doing analytics for small and mid-size, and COVID hit, and he just had family commitments, and so I took over the business. We renamed it Sol Analytica, and then we've been growing like crazy since, doing that and doing the consulting and the software development.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
One or two questions about his career path, and then we can jump into flipping the script, and then we can ask you about your interview process. You guys have any questions about the career trajectory?
No questions about that. I'm kind of surprised, but the question I do have is your current vision versus the vision you had, I guess, your second job. Like, what's something that you could have told yourself back then that would have been monumental help?
Something that I would have told myself then.
That's a good question.
I may have suggested going off and doing consulting and getting that experience across multiple different companies. That's something that I wouldn't call it a regret at all. But it is something that if I were to have the 2020 hindsight to like manage my career a little differently, I might have done that between the small company and the medium-sized to bigger company that I worked at, just to get that experience in. That said, I wouldn't do it any differently than I've done it. I mean, I have been super lucky to have the opportunities that I have had as I've gone through them. It's just, it's luck, and it's a lot of work to be in the right place at the right time, but it's been really wonderful. I mean, when I took that job, I literally saw the posting, knew it was right, hopped on a plane the next day, flew there to meet the people at a job fair.
Wow.
And then, but it was a year and a half between that and when I actually got the position at that company. So it was really like lay the foundation, and then eventually it kind of worked out. But it took some time because they weren't in a spot where they were ready to hire somebody to manage their data warehouse yet. And so Analytica, at this point, I know that they would have been in the spot to hire somebody for a quarter time to do their data stuff. But yeah, maybe that's the quick answer is that maybe I would have done that consulting for a period. Maybe I would have done like a sales engineering position, because starting up Sol Analytica with no sales background really at all, and then having to like throw myself into that and learn it on the fly. It's been exciting. It's been fun. But if I had sales at background, maybe that's another piece that would have rounded out my career and made me more ready for this. But I think I was ready for it when I took it on.
Gotcha. Hunter, do you have a question?
Kamar stole my question. I was going to ask if there's something that you could go back in time and change. What would you do, I guess?
Yeah, no, I love those kinds of questions because it kind of looks back at. It's interesting because I worked at a $12 billion company as an intern for 2 semesters during my MBA, and then I quickly realized that that's not the right environment for me. So I think as you work through the job, just thinking critically about, is this an environment where I thrive or is it not? To where Charles, I went the opposite, where I had 2 internships, and then I turned my last internship into actually I had 3 internships. Turned the last internship with a smaller company into my first consulting engagement, and then just never really worked as a W-2 employee in this space, which is not advisable. Most people say go work for 10 years and come back. But seem to have made it work, and also to getting that wide breadth of experience, because I've worked with all different kinds of companies on all different, verticals within the business. So that's given me a really wide insight into that.
We have had a few people ask us in the comments if you have any advice for people transitioning into analytics?
Yeah, let's
There was
pull
a
it up.
couple. There was a couple
Yeah.
questions.
So Michael Mattia, he's actually trying to transition from the trades into the analytics space. Do you have any advice there?
Yeah. So one, just do as much practice and get as much data under your fingers as you can. Go, like Amanda mentioned, she was going out to Kaggle. That is a great place to go and get ideas for projects, to things to work on. Go to Tableau Public, look at what other people have done, try and replicate that. If you want to be on the Tableau dev side, like there's so much you can do for free, of things that are just out there. I mean, maybe it's overwhelming. There's so many things, but
Right.
do what's interested in you. If you're coming from a trade, more and more businesses are generating data. Your tools that you're working with, depending on what trade it is, but almost all of them, Internet of Things is making its way in there, and those tools are generating data. And so take an opportunity to go work with the data that's familiar to you and what it is that you're working with. If you're, I can't actually give a good example off the top of my head,
I've got a great example actually.
Yeah.
So our social media coach, Ian Clausewitz, he's actually here. He's 30 minutes south of me here in North Carolina. He was a year ago. He was working in a warehouse. Somehow found out how to get access to their Excel data, built and started analyzing that to then, give advice to their management team. Then interviewed for an entry-level analyst job and got it. What makes that even more insane is that he doesn't even have a college degree. So it's that work experience and being able to drive that business decision. What I think is interesting, that kind of speaks poorly about, I think, a lot of higher education. It's not what it used to be. I feel like especially in the analytics space, there seems to be a growing void between what's taught and then what is actually going on out in the industry.
I think that says something to the trade question specifically too. It is 100% not a requirement for my candidates and my employees to have a bachelor's. Like it doesn't, they don't have to. I think that you can go and learn these skills and be really good at them without that. It certainly helps having the theoretical background that comes from having a computer science degree and or a master's degree in something that's computer science and science related, especially if you're in there doing the data engineering. But I think it's fair to say that data is going to become more like a trade, in that you can get certified, you can get the skills that you need. And the reality is you can do what a company needs and be really successful. And you don't necessarily have to have that bachelor's degree. I don't think it's saying anything negative about the state of the industry though, or the academics, because there's still a lot of value in other paths that allow you to get the theoretical knowledge. And when you have that theoretical knowledge, it makes the rest of your career, when you're switching to different tools, it's much more accessible because you understand what is going on underneath and why those tools are actually the same, even though they're slightly different implementations of the same thing. And so you get a different picture when you have that academic background.
Charles, it is so validating to hear you say that analytics is becoming like a trade. We're literally calling our program an apprenticeship, which is what the model for trade schools. So very cool. That's very reassuring for kind of the future vision that I've laid out as an entrepreneur. But okay, so we're actually over an hour. So Amanda, do you have any questions about Charles and his interview process?
Yeah, so we just have a few, and a lot of it we've already covered. We've already kind of covered the specific interview format that you follow. So I'm going to kind of shift that a little bit to how many rounds of interviews do you typically do, or do you feel is enough?
So I try to do my interviews pretty efficiently. I'll typically do an intro, like welcome first round interview. And then my second round interview is going to be a technical one where I bring in somebody from the company, probably from the team that person will be working with, whether it's data engineering, software engineering, analytics. And so we'll have a second conversation. And then what I do in that second interview is part conversation and part live coding example, whether that's a Python on-screen kind of test or SQL or Tableau. Typically, those would be the three that I would do to see just how adept the person is at the skills they say they have, but also to throw them a curveball or two and see what their approach to learning is. Are they going to take that and go look on Google? Are they going to just ask questions? Are they going to bang until they figure it out? There's not a wrong answer there. It's just, it's for knowing about styles so that we can put together a team that has the right mix of styles and skills so that we can be most successful.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Obviously, when you're hiring somebody, you want someone that can do the job. But other than that, what are your top 3 things that you're looking for in a candidate?
Yeah, so job, I think I've already mentioned that being a data company, you really should have a love of data and a like eat and breathe it. I'm also, because we're still small, looking for a bit of entrepreneurial spirit, and a willingness to go and figure things out, throw yourself in. I saw an interview with Pink, and she was talking about her Trust Fall most recent song, and there's a huge part of that you have to be willing to do that in the small business environment, is just like throw yourself to the universe and see what happens. So I look for a little bit of that. That question, I will have a very different answer for a year and a half to 2 years from now, when Sol Analytica is in a bigger spot and we're probably looking for slightly different roles. But for right now, that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Okay, and then since a lot of the listeners are looking for more junior roles, when you're interviewing for a junior role, do you value willingness to learn over like real world experience? Someone who's already done like an apprenticeship and an internship, that kind of thing.
I think those go hand in hand. I think the fact that somebody has an apprenticeship or has gone and taken a set of courses like John David's, or have gone through a program or taken the initiative to do their own projects on the side that they're excited about and want to show, that shows that. And so I'm looking for the aptitude to learn and the ability. And I think you can show that by either having had experiences in the workplace. For the junior position, I get some people who have 2 years of experience at a company. I get some people who are straight out of school who are interviewing, and there are paths that are successful for both of those.
To piggyback off that, what do you feel about online courses? Or do like course badges? Do they move the needle as far as being impressed at all?
So they're all different. I certainly would not hire somebody just because they had a badge. Like
Okay.
you got to, maybe that helps get in the door and validate that you have some of these skills, but there are other ways that do it for me as well.
Well, I'm asking that question with intention because there seemed to be a large contingency of people trying to get in the space that instead of applying for jobs, they'll take 50 online courses and just after one, after another. And I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot here as a published LinkedIn author, but LinkedIn, it's like edutainment. It's like very light on the learning, more about like entertaining you. And they're hour-long courses. Like you're getting kind of like a cookie cutter. Here's the step-by-step process, to where I think what shows in the interview is like what we're talking about with maybe embedding a visualization in the tooltip. That's not typically going to be in one of these, intro to Tableau courses. So if you go and start playing around with it a little bit more, I think that shows kind of that interest that you're really looking for.
Yeah. It might start to be a yellow flag for me if I came into somebody's resume and they had like 10 or 15 or 30 of those certificates. It's like, well, so what are you, is that what you're spending your time on doing?
Yeah. Wait, what does that signal to you? Poor judgment?
Not necessarily poor judgment, but maybe time management, maybe not an ability to kind of pick and choose the most important things to share on your resume. Because if you've got 20 certs,
Right.
Most likely, only 3 of them are relevant to the specific job that you're applying to.
Gotcha.
Or if they're all relevant to that, only 3 or 4 are actually important for that job. That just is it's pretty rare to see a resume that has that many. I'd probably not interview somebody that had that many, just because there would be other things on their resume that would probably throw me off as well.
It's like a whole cluster of things.
Yeah.
Amanda, is that your last question?
Yep, that's it.
Hunter, Kumar, you got anything?
No.
All right.
I really like this background.
What you were saying?
No, I didn't have any questions because my background is frayed, or I see it as frayed, where his felt more streamlined, where it was consistent within the same field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of that may be survivorship bias of the things that I could have done and didn't make it into my career path. You know, I've been fairly entrepreneurial all my life. I didn't tell you about a couple failed like side ventures that I had ideas about and didn't turn into anything, you know? So it may be that looking at it from now, it looks like a straight path, but it was not a straight path.
Right. And then also too, Kumar, we've talked about this in our coaching calls. Charles, it sounds like you've done a good job of kind of taking hold of your narrative and making it, you know, somewhat logical. And also like it builds on top of itself. But part of that is just like how you're critically thinking about it and how you can leverage your past to succeed in the future.
I think that's a fair statement. And I think it goes into the like looking back at it and building a narrative. I've been in the business and in the industry now for a long time. So I've had an opportunity to make some detours on that path and then end up on the right path, or on the path that I'm currently on. I don't know, maybe if you talk to me 10 years and I'll be retelling my story, and this whole Sol Analytica part will be one of those side paths that I don't talk about. Probably not, I think, at this point, but yeah, it's kind of it is exciting. It's an opportunity. You take your path. And I think some of the being thrown into the sales portion of this is, you're right, John David, talking about the taking hold of the narrative and designing that narrative around the experiences that you've gotten an opportunity to have.
Right. And because having that future vision of where you want to go, it kind of illuminates the right path so that you have some more prudence with your decision making.
Yep.
To where most people kind of just get kicked around based on whatever's immediately in front of them. But Charles, this has been amazing. And we covered an hour and 17 minutes in. I feel like our students have just gotten so much value. So thank you.
This is one of the best episodes that we've ever recorded.
Oh, well, this has been super fun. I'm so glad to have been here. I'm getting a text from one of the people at the company. We're going to go ahead and do this. The Sol Vista site for doing an embedded viz and the job seeker package that we just created. Because we're in beta, we're going to do a 3-week trial for anybody who just happens to be watching this. So if you want to come and try it out, we're going to do a discounted price. So we'll have a coupon code. We'll put that in the thing, and you come and do Sol Vista. I got to give my team props for sending that to me and reminding me of that. But it is definitely, it's been a fun conversation. It's been really interesting hearing your thoughts and questions and having an opportunity to share.
Well, I appreciate your time. Also, the students, you guys have been troopers today, putting yourself. Amanda, kudos to you for putting yourself in a vulnerable position. Well, yes, I mean, I think we had 80 people watching simultaneously at one point. So kudos to you and everybody who's been tuning in. Sorry, we didn't get to the questions as much as we usually do. But part of that's we just had so much ground to cover within, this podcast episode. But thank you so much. And everybody, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you.
See ya.
Cool. Thanks.